Excited to be able to talk about this topic today. Like Sharon said, I'm Stephanie Scott. I am the Vice President of Support Services and Strategy at the St. Louis ARC, and I've been here for just over 15 years. My path started when I was a practicum student. Uh, in the midst of getting my master's in social work at UMSL, I was at the ARC for a chunk of time where I worked with the Family Supports Department closely with Sharon and reported to Mark Keeley. And, I went and I finished school and I loved the ARC so much. I desperately wanted to come back and work here. So my career at the ARC started in our quality enhancement department. So I have worked within the accreditation realm for the entire time I've been here. And my role has just evolved over time. Right now, in addition to quality and strategy related work, I work with the teams who deliver our family support services, our children's services, our leisure services, our independent living services, and our transition services. So I am going to share a presentation today where we are going to talk about not even just accreditation, but planning in general at the St. Louis ARC. We have come upon the last year of our existing strategic plan, which means it's time to start planning for the next one. And it coincides very nicely with accreditation and where we landed with that. So excited to talk about those things. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about strategic planning, and we'll lead into where we're at with accreditation and how these pieces fit together. So, like I mentioned, we are in our last year of our current strategic plan. It runs on the fiscal year. So we are gearing up for our next round of planning. With that 4-year period, accreditation falls in the midst of that. So we try as much as possible to merge what comes from that with our process for planning. So we tend to take a structured approach to our planning when it comes to strategy. Rather than just internally us figure out what that should look like, we hire a contractor to help facilitate the process. We, for this round, have contracted with Sarah Buick from the Illuma Lab. We worked with Sarah on our existing plan and have decided to bring her back on to help us with this next phase. She is a social worker. She's been in the nonprofit sector for a long time and has had her own business for several years as well, where she works with other nonprofits to strategic plan, to look at how they utilize data and make decisions ongoing, and has been a great resource for us, not just in this process, but with many others. So we have already started working with her to design our process, and she's involved in various points along the way. We typically start by doing some various assessments related to us as an organization. That tends to look a little different depending on the direction we see this going. But typically, we are doing some sort of survey with the people who utilize our services, families, community partners, funders, other stakeholders, as well as our staff, to gain information about what's important to people right now. What do they see things looking like over the next 4 years? Where do we need to focus our energy? So we deliver that survey. It typically happens in the fall. So this time we will be working on that and getting that in your hands in the near future. And then we take that information and pull out the themes and work with the consultant to determine what do we need to dig into more. Then we also, at the same time, are doing some self-assessments where organization leadership are taking a look at things related to our capacity, things related to succession planning, things related to what is needed in order to deliver really high quality services. And are we well equipped right now and in the future for those things? So that is really information internally that we are gathering. We utilize an established self-assessment to do that. We're not coming up with that on our own. And those results go directly to Sarah, who will, again, draw out the themes and present those back to us so we can determine where we need to dig in further. In various ways over the years, we've done some sort of landscape analysis. Who else is providing services in the region? What does that look like? How does it compare to what we do? What funding is available? What other things do we need to be considering about the landscape of providing services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? Right now is an interesting time to be looking at this because there are a lot of unknowns related to Medicaid and other kinds of funding. So this will help us prepare for when there's more information available about how things like Medicaid will be handled in the future, and will hopefully allow us to pivot quickly as needed because we have the information ready at our fingertips. We also use that information to look at, if something comes up as a need, is it something that we should be doing, or are there other organizations in the region who are doing that kind of service very well? We really love to meet families where they're at, to fill the gaps in their needs, but we also recognize that we're not equipped to do all the things, nor should we be. Sometimes we have to make a decision that it's we cannot provide the service best, and if we cannot provide the service at the level of quality that we think something should be done at, it's not in anyone's best interest for us to be the ones to do that. So we're always analyzing that piece as well. So then based on all that information, Sarah typically looks at, well, what do we really need to dig into more with people? What are topics that are better addressed in conversation? And based on that, some stakeholder interviews, some focus groups are set up that she facilitates, and again, draws out the themes. She then compiles all of that information and brings it back to the planning team, which is typically made up of our executive leadership, our directors, other key internal stakeholders who can provide insight, some board members, and we then make some decisions about next steps and where do we go with actually developing the plan. What other information do we need? What other data do we need in order to make some decisions? And then we go from there. Sarah helps us really establish some strategic priorities by facilitating conversation amongst the planning team and teams in order to have some clear, measurable guidance on our direction as an organization over the next 4 years. Within that, we are typically identifying some information about how we address some action steps within that. What are our strategies in order to deliver on those action steps, whether that is a strategy very specific to a priority, or if that's strategies we'd like to use as an organization. And then we go from there. Also, in various ways over the years, when we go through this kind of planning, we retest our mission, vision, and values. When I started at the ARC, there was 13 plus values that we said as an organization were important to us. 13 was hard to name off the tip of my tongue. I had a little cardboard tent on my desk that said them, but we realized that we needed to narrow our focus. And through strategic planning, we were able to identify, okay, here are the main things that we really lean into to guide how we provide services. Same with our mission. Is our mission still accurate? I will say that when we went through accreditation recently, they pushed us a little bit on this. They said, we think that maybe your mission does not encompass all the work that you are doing at the level you are doing it within the community. So it's a good time for us to relook at that. And oftentimes that is done through those conversations with stakeholders to really get feedback on those things. We've tweaked the verbiage over time to make sure that's current and aligns with current language. And so that is something that will be part of our process this go around as well. I'm going to give everyone a peek at our current structure of our plan. We have had various formats over the years. Some have been pretty long with lots of information in the plan. Everyone had a printed copy that they had somewhere in their files. How often was that pulled out and looked at? I don't know. But for us, for the last several plan cycles, we've really wanted something short and easy for people to grasp, whether it's our staff, whether it's other stakeholders, where it's understandable and you can look at it quickly and understand where we're going. So this page is what encompasses our mission, vision, values, and what is our signature strength. So what does that even mean? So a few plan cycles ago, when we were working with consultants at that time, we were really, again, trying to refine what are our values and what sets the St. Louis Arc apart in the way that we approach our work. What makes us a high quality provider of service? And what came out of many, many conversations as a theme is that we approach our work through the lens of relationship, that we expect our staff to form strong relationships with people they support, with families, with community partners, and that it's not just transactional, that we are understanding what people value, what they want from their life, how we can best support that vision that they have. And that is really what we feel is our signature strength, the thing that we are best at. So this page just describes those things and really identifies, here's our mission, empowering people to live a better life through our core values of respect, collaboration, and empowerment, in hopes that we work towards a vision where we see a day of full inclusion when all people are accepted and valued by the community for their unique gifts and contributions. So this is what we'll be testing this go around to see, is this still accurate? Does it cover everything? Is it the right language to use? And we are always redefining what these mean to us. When we used to have, in some areas of our buildings still have these sheets of paper that say, okay, if you're in the lunchroom, what does respect look like? When you operationalize that term, what does it mean in practice? And we are always looking at that across the different ways that we approach things. What does that mean in this setting? And so that people have guidance on what we expect and what they can expect from us. This page is what encompasses our priorities, where we say, this is the direction we're going. These are the things that we are working on, and what results we hope to see, and what are the strategies that we're using to do these things. So you can see that some of them are focused on people who receive services and families, and some of them are focused on the agency and how we operate. We track our progress over time. Today, we do not have time to really get into the details of how we have addressed each of these things. What I will encourage you to do, and we can share the link to get there, is if you haven't watched A State of the Arc with Mark from the past 12 months, to go see that on YouTube. He gives great updates about the direction of the organization and what we have accomplished in these areas. We have some other kind of breaking news projects that more information will be coming about soon that relate to this plan. But if you go peek at the article that was recently published in Town and Style about our 75th anniversary, there's some highlights in there about some things that we're doing that came out of this plan that we're very excited about. So we are always looking at this when we are giving updates to our board of directors, when we're doing internal planning about, what do we do next? In order to keep moving in the direction that we feel is important and what people have told us they need. For this upcoming plan, we have determined that we've seen so much growth over the last 4 years. We have really focused on these areas and expanding to meet the need, that we now need to revisit, where do we need to look at our capacity strategically and enhance how we approach operating in order to have continued success, and then in the future, do additional growth if that makes sense. So in the upcoming plan, you probably won't see a lot about more program growth. You're going to see about how we're going to continue on the path with those programs that we've been on, and that we're putting other things in place to make sure we're successful. So what do we do ongoing related to these plans? So every year we're looking at, where do we need to go strategically, and what from our budget needs to support that, and making sure that we are accounting for those things and that we are set up for success. Because it takes money to do this. It takes funding to do this. And you got to have the lights on to be able to provide service. And so the money piece is something that we do have to pay attention to and care about. We use our strategic plan as what we call a strategy screen. If new opportunities present themselves, a new funding presents itself, so we can decide, is this within our capacity? Is this within our wheelhouse? Is this within the direction that we have set? Because just because 4 years ago we said, this is where we're going, you can't predict things like a pandemic where you have to 100% shift how you deliver services. You hope that your strategic plan is flexible enough to where it allows you to pivot when needed because of something that's happening in our world, or like I said, a new opportunity that presents itself. So we're always assessing that and trying to see what makes the most sense. We are always using our plan to give updates to our board of directors and committees about progress of our organization and direction that we are going, how we are addressing those priorities, and again, how it aligns with the budget. The board does approve our budget annually. And so we include information about how those budget items tie to the strategic plan. So they can also provide some oversight to ensure that all the pieces are aligning and we are moving in the direction that we have set. And then pulling in all those other plans, making sure that, if we go through a funder review and they have some guidance that we need to be following, that we are including that and assessing that. If there are department specific goals that they have, how that fits in and how we are moving forward on those things. Just making sure that while we have these separate plans in the background, that they're not going different directions, that everything is heading in the same direction. So that's going to lead us to talking more about our accreditation and how that fits in.